to call the meeting to order. Our invitation this evening will be said by Austin Fettner. Austin, if you'll come up and we'll all stand. Thank you.
Thank you. Please bow your heads. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for the freedom to be able to gather together as a community this evening. Thank you for your promise that where 2 or 3 are gathered, you are there in the midst. We ask that you would open our ears so that we may hear your voice, open our minds so that we may receive your eternal wisdom, and open our spirit so we may know your leading and guidance. Thank you for each person on this council and their willingness to serve this city for the good of the people. Father, we ask that you go before us this evening to illuminate your path to unity and understanding. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Austin. Travis, Ray, if you'll come up and lead us in the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Travis. Okay, we'll move on now to item 4, which would be employee recognitions.
Hey, Mayor and council and members of the public, I have one recognition to share with you this evening. It's a really nice one. It involves employees in 3 different departments. This is one that I actually received just today. And this recognition came from Jody Geiswall. And you all may know Jody. And she says that I tried to call to recognize Officer Luke Smith, but got an answering service, but I wasn't sure if it was because of the holiday or not. I hope this works out as well. I only have his first initial, L. Smith, on the incident report, so I'm sure that identifies him for you. Yesterday, my son, Holt, backed into a guy wire of a city electric pole in front of Starbucks. Officer Smith was the officer that responded to help. My son was not injured, but was very shook up and worried. Officer Smith was so kind to Holt the whole time, as I'm sure he could see he was pretty shook up and upset. He was also so kind to me on the phone since we were not there with him. And he assured us that he would make sure his truck was okay to drive home before they let him leave. He also offered to take Holt anywhere he needed to go if he was too upset to drive. I think a lot of times people will jump to conclusions since he is a teenage boy and not take the time to calm the situation or have such a positive outcome. He truly did that, and Holt came home talking about how nice the officer was and how helpful he was, and that he never made him feel bad about what had happened. As a parent, it is so awesome to experience the care we receive here in Fredericksburg. From your nice officer to the EMS that responded and talked to us after they checked him out and calmed him down, to Kyle Tribes at the City Electric Department, everybody was so kind and caring. This is a scary incident for him and us that could have been worse, but that was very manageable thanks to everyone's hard work and caring dispositions. Much gratitude, Jody and Kevin Geiswat. So again, Mayor and Council, this is another indication of some of the positive employees that we have working for the city. They go out of their way to serve the public.
Yeah,
And
we're
it gives me pleasure to
doing
share.
things right. That's
Yeah.
good. That's good to hear. Okay. Okay, we're going to go into public comments on agenda items. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people who have signed up. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. You will get a 1-minute warning. And then when your time is up, you'll get the same warning. Our first speaker this evening is Wesley Ray and Liza Smith. You're on deck.
Good evening, council members. My name is Wesley Ray. I will be brief. I'm here to speak about the noise ordinance that's being proposed. When I first learned of this noise ordinance, I can understand the reasonable complaint about the noise of our neighbors, but what concerned me about this ordinance is what it will accomplish. Do we really want to live in neighborhoods where we are policing each other and imposing noise curfews and hefty fines being enforced against our neighbors as a result? Is that really the culture that we want to cultivate in our community? As I understand it, I've been a resident here for the past 5 years, and the community that I see here is the one where we take ownership of our own peace and our own enjoyment, and we talk to our neighbors. We don't police them. And I'm here today to ask that that continue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Leslie, I failed to mention you do live in the city, correct? Yeah, if you would, Liza, if you'll give us your name and if you live in the city, and then Leslie Spraggins, you're on deck.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Liza Smith, and I live in Fredericksburg, 734 Madeline. Oh, I'm not going to say that, actually. Just kidding. I just built a new house, and I'm so excited. I have 2 properties in Fredericksburg in the city limits. I don't use any of those for short-term rentals, but I do have 2 now. And with that new house, I built a new patio. And on that patio, I have my Adirondack chairs, I have a fire pit, and I'm so excited to go out there and have a glass of wine at the end of the night when my son is in bed and chat on the phone, maybe talk to a couple of friends, listen to some YouTube. I don't know, any of the things that I want to do on my patio. But when I measure my voice on the patio, the average conversation in decibels is 60. So when the council is looking at reducing the noise ordinance down to 55 decibels, that is basically telling me that I cannot go outside after 10 p.m. and talk. I can't have a conversation with a friend on the patio. I can't, play some cornhole and let people just hang out and have some fun. And so, I downloaded this app on my phone to just kind of get a feel for what decibel actually means. Because when you say 55 decibels, it doesn't mean anything to me. And so I don't know if it means anything to you or to anybody else, but I just know that these are the different things that I found whenever I was looking at decibels. So my refrigerator hums at 42 decibels. That's nothing. And then a car was driving by my house, not one of the trucks that you can hear. It was 56 decibels driving by, and that's from inside my house. 20 feet away, hot tub, 65 decibels. That's on high jets, 62 on low. Wind chimes, 65 to 70. Friendship Lane, 55 to 60 at 300 yards away. That's just noise. That's just traffic.
That's low.
That's low. Yeah, exactly. And so without even saying all of this, I have a decibel reader, like I said, on my phone. So I thought maybe I could just kind of show you what it is. So as I'm just talking right here, you can kind of see the decibel meter. It's like 75, 80 when I talk a little bit louder. If everyone can be really quiet for just a moment, I'll record. And we'll actually see what it is when we have a quiet room. Okay, we're like at 45 with a quiet room. Now, I know we can all say something together, maybe like, I love Fredericksburg, but don't be loud. Just say it in a normal conversation tone on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. I love Fredericksburg. That went up to 85. Now, I understand that's a lot of people, and we're all having a conversation together.
Liza, when you turn, I'm not able to hear what you're saying.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's not a problem.
So that went up to 85 when we all said that together. And that is a lot of people. But if you're having a gathering or if you're having a party or anything for a birthday or celebration, wedding, baby shower, whatever that goes past 10 p.m., you're violating it. So at this point, I'm scared. I don't want to go out on my patio and have an angry neighbor call in and me have a $500 fine. I don't want to. I don't know that the residents and the people that live inside the city limits actually
Liza,
know what 55 decibels mean.
Thank you. Your time is up. I gave you just a tad extra. Thank you.
Okay. All right. I just want to say also, it doesn't affect just parties. It's our homes and our lives. Okay.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
Okay, Leslie Spraggins and then Tammy Smith, you're on deck.
Good evening. My name is Leslie Spraggins, and I'm a resident of the city of Fredericksburg. I'm speaking to you tonight about the proposed sound ordinance. I'm speaking as a resident and not a member of any group. I'm opposed to the proposed sound ordinance as written due to the decibel level. I believe the decibel level to be at a range that's too low for a normal conversation to occur outside without being subject to a fine. Last night, my husband and I measured decibels from 10 feet away from 3 sources of sound in our back and side yards. First, we tested our HVAC units that are within 10 feet of the property line. With the units running and us standing 10 feet away, They measured 67 decibels with no talking and silence otherwise. Another area of our yard is our pool equipment, also 10 feet from the property line. It's enclosed in a room with a door and an open window used for ventilation. Pool equipment enclosed in a room with us standing 10 feet away measured 61 decibels. Next, we moved to our pool fountain. Standing 10 feet away from our pool fountain, we measured 64 decibels. All of these measurements are done at night with no talking and no audible sound other than the hum of the equipment. If I wanted to have a conversation near my pool, which I frequently do, I would have to talk over the sound of the fountain that's already out of noise compliance. This is all before a teenager dips their toe in the pool and does a cannonball, and Lord knows what that decibel level would be. I have great neighbors, but I might not always have great neighbors. And if I had someone who wanted to cause trouble or punish me, then they could call daily on me and have me fined, as I am exceeding 55 decibels 24/7 in my back and side yard. Why would the city want an ordinance that is so strict that a person cannot even hold a conversation in their own backyard without the threat of penalty from the city? This doesn't make sense to me. I know most of you live in the city, and I would think that you would like to be afforded the opportunity to have a conversation in your backyard without the police coming down your driveway. With all the proposed ordinance changes going on, it appears this might be targeting STR noise. But in reality, you are also targeting and affecting residents. It might not be your intent to ticket residents, but let me tell you, that is what's going to happen, because my neighborhood residents make a lot more noise than any short-term rental around me. Barking dogs, for instance, well exceed the decibels. If I'm unhappy with my neighbor leaving his dog out too long, then I can get him ticketed because he would definitely exceed 55 decibels for 30 seconds. All of this seems so extreme, and I'm wondering, to what end is your motivation? I urge you to go back and look at research on decibel levels, and if you must set a level, set it at something that is reasonable and allows people to use their backyards. Let's just use some common sense and vote no to the new sound ordinance as written.
Thank you, Leslie. Tammy and Jeanette Harmuth, you're on deck.
Hi, my name is Tammy Smith. I'm a Fredericksburg resident. I also work for Absolute Term Reservation Service, where our goal is to be good neighbors and to follow the rules set by the city as we have been all these years. As I've stated before in many city council meetings, we have 200 rooms, and I rarely get a phone call about noise since 2007. And the few times that I've had to call guests, they're embarrassed. They stop immediately and apologize. So I met with Chief Wetz and Officer Voyauer a few months ago with the goal to come up with a system where we can help alleviate the burden on the police department from this STR complaints. I met with Chief Wetz. He advised me that I did not need to do anything. I didn't need to come up with a plan. This is their job. They want to handle the calls. When I asked about the number of calls that got referred, he referred me to Officer Voyauer, who does the paperwork. He said he didn't know the numbers offhand, but he thought it was roughly about 2 times a week noise calls that were usually Main Street noise and rarely was a violation. Neither appeared to be concerned that it wasn't something the police force couldn't handle. What I'm asking the city council to do is talk to the police officer, police department, really understand what those decibel levels mean that are in front of you tonight, and don't punish the residents for those few bad owners or few bad guests. Let's come together as a community with the STR Alliance, with our reservation services and our neighbors to work towards good policies. I've come up with a couple, like a contract that every guest that stays in Fredericksburg has to sign, a call center possibly, harsh fines to the guests if the current noise ordinance is violated. We need to stop this before the guest disrupts the neighbors, while everything being proposed right now is after the guest has already made the noise problems. So we need to lead our owners to good policies with strict consequences to guests who break those rules. I had something, if time, and I actually have time. So
Yes,
this weekend was a prime example of I have some bigger houses that I'm trying some noise monitoring systems. And so at 1:35 in the morning, I get a ding, and I'm like, oh no, I have one. So I'm texting, I'm calling, I'm doing everything, and I'm thinking, uh-oh, they're having a big party in the backyard. 15 minutes later, it goes off again. 15 minutes later, it goes off again. And I'm thinking, oh no. I got to call police. And I thought, I can't call police. Chief Wetz told me not to go out there. He said, do not cause a commotion between you and a guest. But do I call the police? No, because now it's going to be a problem property. The city's going to know, Jason's going to know, and then it's going to be a problem property. So I'm stuck now thinking these guests are having this horrible party. I can't do anything about it. So the neighbors are waking up. Turns out 15 minutes later, the sensor goes off. My first thought is the guests turned the sensor off. Nope. It was the wind the whole time. Every 15 minutes, it was going off because of the wind. One time was a wind chime. So it was
Tammy,
all fine.
you've
Sorry.
done really good. Thank
So
you.
we're all in this together, make our town a great place to live, to thrive, and keep our property rights intact.
Thank you, Tammy. Jeanette?
Hi, Jeanette Marmuth. I live in the city, and I just appreciate everything everyone was saying. I wasn't going to speak on this, but I am not a B&B owner. In fact, I live next to one. But I agree with what these people are saying. The city should be spending their time on more important things and less restrictions and things about it. I think the people need to have their homes and be monitoring themselves. I just want to bring up a couple corrections on the minutes.
Time, just a minute. Stop the time. Is this an appropriate agenda item to talk about minutes from previous? And that's what you want to visit about, right?
Yes,
A
it's on
previous
the
meeting?
agenda,
Is it minutes that are on tonight's agenda for approval?
the minutes for approval.
The ones that are currently on there right now?
Yes,
Okay, good. Thank you, Jeanette, for clarification.
Yeah.
And I stopped your time so you didn't lose anything.
okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jeanette.
So
Go ahead.
you still have more time on your 3 minutes, so. Okay, so one is, and I forgot to bring a copy of the minutes, but under the public comments, when the affidavit was presented and read, it says on there something about, so-and-so read the affidavit to the Constitution. It is not the affidavit to the Constitution. The whole title of it is Notice to Show Clean Hands in Federal Partnerships, Demand to Cease and Desist Maladministration Activity. It's an affidavit demanding the city to cease and desist maladministration activity. So you could shorten that, but it's not an affidavit to the Constitution. So I would like that to be, clarified. Second thing is down below where it said that they were delivered. Basically, the notices were served to the city. Also, I'll speak for her, but I noticed Deborah Hotbecker's name was misspelled. Not a big deal. And then the last thing is when people speak on things, and this is in general, but in this one, it was like one after another, is when people are speaking, like a lot of people spoke about the American Rescue Plan Act and the decorum rules, and they were clearly voicing their opposition. And I noticed every time I get up and talk about the American Rescue Plan Act, which is I'm voicing my opposition, or when I brought the open records request with the concerns about the terms.
Jeanette, I'm going to go time again.
Yeah.
That's not on the agenda. Is that correct?
Well, no, I'm saying that on these minutes, you had a number of people where it just said, so-and-so spoke about the American Rescue Plan Act. So-and-so spoke about the rules. It should be, it should have just a little bit, not much, but just they spoke in opposition to. Okay?
Good deal.
Does that
Thank you.
make sense? Thank you.
Yes, it does, Jeanette. Okay, thank you, Jeanette. That was well said, well done. Considering those comments, we'll go to the consent agenda. The following items may be acted upon in a single motion. No separate discussion or action on any of these items will be held unless pulled from the request of a member of the city council. A, consider the approval of the city council January 3, 2022 regular meeting minutes. B, consider the approval of the following event request for road closure. City staff is hosting a touchy truck on Thursday, March 24, 2022, and is requesting a closure of West Austin Street between North Adams and North Crockett Street beginning at 7 a.m. until 7 p.m. Double I, Hill Country Memorial Wellness Center is hosting the annual Wildflower Run and Walk, 10K and 5K, on Saturday, April 23, 2022, at Mark Plots, and is requesting a closure on West Austin Street between North Adams and North Crockett Streets on April 23rd, 2022, 6 a.m. to 12 p.m. Triple I, Fredericksburg J.C.'s is hosting the annual Crawfish Festival Friday, May 27th, Sunday, May 29th, 2022, and is requesting the closure of one southbound lane on Adams Street adjacent to the Mark Plots beginning May 27th at 8 a.m. until 10 p.m. on May 29th, and the closure of West Austin Street, North Adams Street, and North Crockett Streets beginning May 27th at 8 a.m. until 10 p.m. May 29th. I-5, Fredericksburg Rotary is hosting the annual Fredericksburg Car Fest on Saturday, June 4th, 2022 at Mark Plots, and is requesting the closure of West Austin between North Adams and North Crockett Street on June 4th, 2022 at 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. Does anybody want to remove one of these?
I'd just like to make a comment. When you read that about the J.C.'s there, it's May 27th through May 29th, Sunday. That entails Saturday also. You said May 27th and then Sunday, the 29th, so,
That's correct.
yeah.
The weekend.
It's the weekend. All right.
Okay.
It's written properly, yeah, but
Is there anything that needs to be pulled? If
No.
I will ask.
I move to
Whoa,
approve the.
wait a minute. As the mayor, can I ask for something to be pulled? Thank you. I would like us to pull 6A. For the reason being, I would like that to be pulled and be reviewed and reconsidered at our next meeting. Do I need a vote on that?
You mean the minutes, the regular meeting minutes?
Yeah, the regular meeting minutes.
So they can be corrected.
Correct.
Okay.
Do we need a motion on that?
No, we need to vote on B, 1 through 4, and
Okay.
then we need to vote on
Okay.
A1. I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda for B subheadings 1, 2, 3, 4.
Second.
Have a motion by Tom and a second by Jerry. Any further discussion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? There is none. Motion carries 5-0. How do we handle the A? Do we need a motion on that?
You just need to call the item and then
Okay.
discuss and make any motions.
Consider the approval of the City Council January 3, 2022 regular minutes. Okay, I indicated why I pulled it for further evaluation and correction at our next meeting. Any discussion? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve.
I have a motion by Bobby and a second by
Second?
Jerry. Sorry, a little late there, Kathy.
Okay.
Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? There is none. Motion carries. Public hearings. A,
Mayor, I'm sorry, before we move on.
Yeah.
So, Councilman Watson made a motion to approve, and so I just want to clarify, are you approving the minutes, or are you approving the proposal by the mayor to bring it back at the next meeting?
To bring it back.
that clarification, Daniel. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Thank
you. 7A, holy public hearing to receive comments for or against a request for the zoning change from single-family residential R1 to zoning classification mixed residential R2 for approximately 6.69 acres of land, described as 1.26 acres out of the GECO number 10, 0.93 acres out of the GECO number 10, 1.3 acres out of the GECO 10 and Lot 1 of Brentwood Oak subdivision located at 626, 702, 704, and 616 South Eagle Street, requested by Jeffrey Moore and Lauren Court. I entertain a motion to go from regular to open public.
So moved.
I have a motion by Tom,
Second.
second by Jerry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? There is none. Motion carries. Is there anyone here for public comment to speak to this? Doesn't appear to be.
I move we go out of public hearing back in the regular session.
Have a
Second.
motion by Jerry and a second by Bobby. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? There is none. Motion carries 5-0. B, hold a public hearing to receive comments for or against the following requested changes at 1100 Friendship Lane, requested by Kevin Sproggins. Z 216. I, a future land use change from mixed use corridor to a future land use classification of commercial for approximately 8 acres of land to be subdivided from ABS A002 W.H. Anderson, number 197, tract 3, 22.28 acres. Double I, a zoning change from industrial park M3 to zoning classification of commercial C2 for approximately 8 acres of land to be subdivided from ABS A002 W.H. Anderson, number 197, tract 3, 22.28 acres. I'll entertain a motion to go from.
I move we go from regular session to public hearing.
Second.
You have a motion by Jerry and a second by Bobby. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? There is none. Motion carries. Is anyone here like to speak to that? Oh, there you are, Kevin. Hello. Snuck up on me.
I
Thank
did,
you.
but you had your head down.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Kevin Spraggins, BI Consulting Engineers.
Kevin, I don't know if that mic picking you up.
Yeah, but I always turn it because it's so loud and then I get
Okay,
echoey.
that's fine.
So,
I just want to be sure you
anyway,
can hear as well.
yeah, I'm loud enough, but if everybody wants to hear me. So we are requesting a zoning change tonight, and I don't know if that's going to be up on the screen at all, the location that we're.
Do you want me to turn that on now, or do you want me to wait till I do my presentation?
Well, if it helps your presentation.
Well, I mean, we're just want to let everybody know what we're doing. We are asking for a zoning change from industrial M3 to C2 on 8 acres that basically is behind Sutherland's on Friendship Lane. The reason for the zoning change is because we are currently working on site plans for a hotel complex, either 3 hotels or 2 hotels and a conference center. And so that requires the zoning change to C2. And Jason can expand on the reasoning for that, and he'll also expand on in his write-up where we're coming in next month to change the zoning on the rest of the track as well. The fellows have agreed to change that zoning, and Jason will elaborate on that. So I'm here to answer any questions, and we ask for y'all's approval.
Thank you, Kevin. Anyone else? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move we go out of public back in the regular session.
Second.
Have a motion by Jerry and a second by Bobby. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Those were our 3 public hearings. So now we'll move on to 8A. Consider the approval of ordinance 2022-03, amending the zoning ordinance of the city and changing the zoning district to approximately 6.69 acres of land located at 626, 702, 704, and 616 South Eagle Street, situated in the city, changing the said property from single-family residential, R1, to mixed residential, R2, and providing an effective date. Jason?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Council. So we've received the request for this zoning change, and Eric, I've got it pulled up if you want to, y'all can see that. Y'all can see my cursor here. So there are 3 properties here, or 4 properties that are requesting this zoning change from R1 to R2. These properties are bound to the north by an R3 multifamily development. And then to the south and to the west, there is an approved site plan for an existing multifamily. The C1 zoned area will be at the density of R3. The R2 portion of the multifamily property will stick with the R2 density, so a little less dense behind those properties. But we did look at the future land use plan was the first thing that we took a look at. And when we saw this, all of these properties are designated on future land use plan as medium density residential. The R2 is the equivalent of the zoning district. So this request is in line with the current comprehensive plan as far as future land use goes. When we talk about the location, again, there's some R1 across the property, but the majority of this site, these are basically islands of R1 within that R2. So staff does recommend approval of the requested zoning change as presented.
Thank you, Jason. questions? Kathy, I'll start with you.
No, no, I don't have.
Okay.
Oh, I do, sorry.
No, that's okay.
Did you have to provide notice to surrounding landowners?
Yes, everyone within 200 feet gets a letter for the zoning change request.
And the letter did go out?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, we double checked it.
And any response?
We had one response. If you look at the image here, if you can see my mouse, oh, my mouse disappeared. The R1 large tract that's just south of the Waterburger tract, the owner of that property had some concerns. They weren't protesting the zoning change in use. They were protesting it in density. They have some drainage issues on their property, and they were concerned that the higher density would compound their issues. We did discuss this at our development review committee. These sites, generally, the three properties on the south will most likely drain to the south and Eagle. The R1, larger R1 site, some of that may drain to Eagle, but most of it actually goes up back towards the apartment complex. So again, with any development, we would go through the required drainage analysis and flows as part of their civil site plan and construction plans.
Okay, thank you.
Tom?
So Jason, with the drainage issue by Ms. Shesso, isn't the drainage, the water issue, if you look at the map, the R3 Brentwood, the water is going across the R3 property and then down toward the commercial on 290 East. So it's not water on the affected properties, because that water is all flowing south toward Friendship Lane and underneath Friendship Lane back across Eagle Street.
Yes, so most of that water, some of that property to the north, just south of the R3 may have some of its water that ends up hitting that site, most likely very little, but the lion's share of the water they're receiving is from areas, not just the apartment complex to the north, it comes down Highway Street. The issue there is the undersized culverts at 290. They're really restricting that flow of that water. So in big, heavy storm events and rain issues, we see that kind of start backing up. And that's a function of the undersize of the infrastructure, as well as the intensity and of our rain events over the last several years. They're dumping more water in less amount of time, even though our annual rainfall has not changed. So that'll be something that we continue to look at, but unfortunately, we do have to work with TxDOT on those culverts.
I think anybody that's lived in the city for any length of time, 30 plus years, will realize that the corner of Highway Street and Eagle Street has always been a continuing problem of too much water trying to move through an area. So that's all the questions. I don't have any questions about any of the other. I think it's in the best interest of the city to change these properties in zoning.
Bobby?
No questions.
Jerry?
Jason, one time, wasn't there a road that was gonna come from the south there or across Sunset and tie into Eagle Street, or
Sunrise?
is that still gonna?
Yes, so that
That's
is
still
planned
under-
still, that connection. If you actually look between the northernmost property and the next one down, you'll see a little gap in that red line. That is actually the right of way that was acquired to make that connection. So as the developments start to go, we've got one called Botanica that's a little further just west of Mr. Musselman, Councilman Musselman's property. They will connect to that Sunrise. They'll have some improvements to do, and then when the multifamily goes through, they'll make that connection. And then at that point, it'll be up to the city to kind of finish off that last little piece.
Okay. I don't have any questions. Any other questions? Okay, very good. Thank you, Justin. I'll entertain a motion then on 8A.
I'll move to approve as presented. I'll second.
Have a motion by Bobby and a second by Tom.
Mayor,
Is there a second reading?
that's what I was going to mention. That we didn't include it on the agenda, but 8A and 8B are both the first of two readings. So if council wants to adopt them tonight, you need to include a waiver for the second reading.
They want to amend here.
I'll move to approve as presented and waive the second reading.
I'll second that
Have
motion.
a motion by Bobby and a second by Tom. Any further discussion? There is none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? There is none. Motion carries 5-0. B, consider the approval of the following changes at 1100 Friendship Lane requested by Kevin Spraggins, Z2126. I, ordinance 2204, adopting a change in the comprehensive plan of the city, excuse me, specifically in the land use map as to approximately 8 acres of land being a portion of the W.H. Anderson number 197, abstract number 2, changing the property from mixed use corridor MU to commercial C, providing that the change become part of the comprehensive plan and providing for an effective date. Daniel, we should do that one first before we move to the second one.
That's correct. You need to do the land
Okay.
use first.
Okay, let's do that one first. Okay, Tom, I'll start with you. Any questions?
So is,
Oh, okay. No, that's fine. I'm sorry, Jason. I apologize.
That's all right. If I can hold
Didn't
off
want
if
to,
you
didn't want
want
to
to
jump
jump
start
right
your
into it. but-
presentation. Thank you. Thank you.
So I'm going to touch on the zoning change request, even though we are talking the land use, because that is the impotence for the request. So as you look at, on the site here, this site's approximately 15 acres, I believe. They're looking at 8 acres currently. The proposed purchaser would like to do a hotel, possibly a conference center. But from a city standpoint, we're looking at this. This is the M3 zoning is an industrial park. Not the most ideal zoning district in this commercial area. We've got single family residential to the south that is in the ETJ, but that is single family developments nonetheless. We've got an RV park, and then we have two major retail commercial centers in Sutherland's and Walmart. Further down on Friendship Lane, you also have an apartment complex. So having this tract industrial, I think is kind of a negative for the city. There's a lot of land uses that are allowed in that industrial zoning that would not be compatible adjacent to compared to the adjacent zoning. So when we looked at the request on C2, staff felt that that's probably more appropriate for the area. C1 is a little bit it's more of a neighborhood commercial. There's not a lot of retail, and given this location, there's not a lot of population to serve as far as kind of general services. There is some high apartments that are moving further down, but generally the location does fit the C2 zoning district a little bit better. And so again, that's when we looked at the future land use. Well, what does the land use plan say? At that point, we noticed that this was what we're calling the mixed use corridor. So if you recall, we drafted a new zoning district, MU2. That was in direct response to the comprehensive plan and this future land use category. However, the future land use category calls all of this area outside the intersection as commercial. It calls the rest as mixed use. So we do have a mixed use overlay zoning district. Those are some entry corridor guidelines, but those don't go back this far onto the property. They generally apply only to properties that front on 290 or 87 or one of our gateway entrance corridors. So when we looked at the request or the future land use plan, we felt there was a little disconnect between the proposed MU overlay and the proposed mixed use. Again, the MU2 zoning district would allow everything that the C2 zoning does allow. It would allow more residential by right versus through the CUP process that C2 allows now. And it would require the owner to adhere to the overlay zoning for the entrance corridor, which is parking in the back, buildings front loaded. Again, this is not really our corridor area. It does connect two major corridors, though, when we're talking 87 and 290. So staff looked at this. We had some conversations back and forth with the applicant. We actually put forward a supportive for the MU2 and said, this will give you the land use you're requesting as well as let you do the hotel. I think there's some issues with their hotel and how they want to develop as far as their standard packages and all of that. So we said we would support the C2 given its location, but again, there would need a land use change that would have to be done with that. The second part of that is that we would require the entire property for us to support it to come in under one land use and one zoning. So the applicant did talk to the owners on the remainder of tract. We had a conference call to discuss it and go through some of the issues, and then they submitted their application. So that will be making its way to P&Z in February and then following meeting to council. So that would bring that entire tract under the proposed zoning.
The other thing that we looked at, request of Councilmember O'Neill, is we've had a lot of land use changes on Friendship Lane between 290 East and Highway 87. And so we wanted to present the council a map kind of showing those changes so you can kind of get an idea on how this fits into everything else going on in Friendship Lane. So we wanted to show you kind of just kind of update you on what all's proposed in this area along Friendship Lane. So you want to pull up that map?
Yeah, if I could, Eric, if you could give me a little bit of control on my image, and I think that way council can see this. It's on the small screen. I think on the bigger screens you'll be able to see. So working from east to west, this is the subject property with the green arrow. Again, the entire property will be coming before council. As we go back, we have a condominium project right here. This is 8 units. The owner is going to be selling those off, so those are single family products. I do know that, according to the owner, several of those will be short-term rentals. And then we touched on the commercial zoning C1 to the north along Eagle Street. That is an R3 development standard density, and then moves back into R2 densities on the multifamily. The property here, which we're calling the Segner Tract, there's a new project that we're referring to as Botanica. This is a property that is doing, it's a multifamily product, but these are single family homes for rent. So no attached buildings. They aren't on individual lots. They're not for sale. They are for rent, but the product itself is a single family structure. Just south of that, we have the Seco mixed use development. They are currently working on phase 1 and 2. They have their preliminary plat approved. Their site plan has been approved with some conditions, and they are working through the civil and final plat process now. We're expecting to release those approvals hopefully within the next 30 days, kind of depending on the plat and the timelines. But they're wrapping up their project there and are eager to start construction. Then we have it's gone through a couple of names. I believe the most current is Friendship Oak subdivision. This one is phase 1, and they've got their approved civil construction plans for their single family products. This is R2, so this is a small lot, single family residential subdivision. Actually be accessed through an extension of Creek Street as part of the first phase. Eventually that will connect over back to 87. There is a rezone here as part of this that was done for multifamily, but we have not seen anything on that, so I did not include that in the map at this time. Only was really focused on stuff that we have had through our DRC process. Just north of that, this tracts, which are right behind the hotel. This large tract was kind of a mixed use development. This was prior to my time here, but I believe it's a indoor climbing area. I believe they had some office space and then some rental units as well, so some residential. And then north of that, there's the Stuart Barron property next to the city park. That was a small acreage tract, in essence, a little strip center that may have some retail and some type of local coffee or donut breakfast place. We've had some conversations on the old drive-through facility. We've seen a very conceptual plan at this point. It was a pre-DRC meeting, so we haven't followed up with anything solid, but there could be some additional developments there. But until that gets further along, again, we didn't put that on that map. So if you have any questions on any of these developments, I do have some different images that were pulled from some of y'all's packets over the last few months that I can zoom in on, and we can talk about what those developments and what those densities are if you'd like.
You forgot the Collins.
Oh, sorry. Yes, on South Eagle, just south of the Seco development. This is also another condominium project. These are 24 units on 3 lots. I do know the owner is planning on selling those, so the same with the other Mosley project. We may see some short-term rentals, but I do know he's keeping some through deed restrictions that will be for owners and individuals to live. So don't know what those mixes are. They're still working on their condo docs at this time for our review.
Tom?
And the 2 islands of R2 residential.
Yes, so one is the property that we received next to our detention pond. Plans for at some point in the future a park. And then this is a existing single-family residential, developed, I believe, in the late 80s, maybe early 90s timeframe.
That's the Kuzenberg, that's South Creek. So
So yes, this area has seen a lot of development, but it's not shocking. When you talk about large-scale developments, generally they need three things: availability of land, utilities, and access. This is probably one of the few places in town that has all three of those in abundance. So I think that's why we're seeing that activity there in that location.
and then so on East Friendship Lane, I guess, that way. Next to the, yeah, right next to the, I have two questions. So right next to the subject track is the 1019 apartments, and that's R3.
Yes, sir.
And then right next to the apartments is the Pentecostal church, and that is C2.
Yes. So that area is C2. Well, the church actually is, I
No,
believe.
that's the Baptist
Right.
church.
The church, the Baptist church is R1. The other church is C2. We have had some conversations with the hotel developer on one of these tracks. They're looking at their access point. They need a second point of access,
Right.
most likely on Friendship Lane. But that'll be a fire access.
You do know where the Pentecostal church is, don't you?
Yes, yes, sir. But this one here would be the only other hotel in the area that we have some concerns about. But again, it's more about the fire access versus just general access. So we don't expect a lot of traffic from that off of here. There will be a knock box and a gate that has to be locked. That was part of our discussions with them.
Would you know if there are any issues, since we've got two churches across the street from one another, of whether that would affect any kind of TABC regulations? Are they within?
So TABC does have their regulations. So it is interesting the way TABC regulates them. So from the churches, it is, I believe, 100. Do you remember the distance? Yeah, so daycares are another one. The church can go up higher. Churches are property line, or I'm sorry, the schools are property line to property line. Churches and daycares are front door to front door. So you can have a situation where you could have a property that is immediately adjacent to a church that is selling alcohol, but they measure from the front door to the distance to the street, down the walking path, and then back. So they could be right next to each other and still be granted a permit. We haven't had those conversations with the hotel developer, but given their distance, we think they'll most likely be having any issues.
Could you tell us the difference here? And looking at, they're asking for a change from the M3. What is, and then the property immediately to the south is M2. What's the difference between M2 and M3?
M3 is our most intense, so it allows all type of industrial uses, packaging plants, shipping. There's a whole host in there. I don't have them all, off the top of my head. I can pull those up if you'd like to go through, but some of them are definitely not compatible next to residential.
All right, thank you.
Bobby?
No questions.
Jerry?
No.
I think Friendship is gonna become a very busy street.
It's already very busy.
Oh, okay. With that being said, any further questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion for BI.
I move to approve the future land use change from mixed use mixed use corridor to a land use classification of commercial on approximately 8 acres of land to be subdivided from ABS A0002 WH Anderson, number 197, track 3, 22.28 acres.
Second. Okay, we have a motion by Tom and a second by Bobby. Any further discussion?
Are you waiving the
Second
second
reading.
reading? Waiving the second reading, since it's not in here.
Want to second that?
I'll second that too.
Okay. Excuse me. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? There is none. Motion carries 5-0. BII, ordinance 20-02205, amending the zoning ordinance of the city and changing the zoning district as to approximately 8.0 acres of land in a portion of the W.H. Anderson number 197, abstract number 2, situated in the city, changing said property from industrial park entry to commercial C2 and providing an effective date and waive the second reading. This time I know it's you, Jason.
So I started with zoning last time, so it's pretty much same presentation, but if you have any additional questions, I'll be glad to answer those.
I don't have any questions. Folks, Terry, Bobby?
No.
Tom?
Okay, Mayor, I make a motion to zoning change from industrial park M3 to zoning classification of commercial C2 for approximately 8 acres of land subdivided from ABS A0002 WH Anderson number 197 track 3, 22.28 acres, and waive the second reading.
Second.
Have a motion by Tom and a second by Jerry.
Waiving the second.
Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? There is none. Motion carries 5-0. Going on to 8C, consider the approval of ordinance 202202 for a second reading of amending the Article 6 noise and sound level regulation of Chapter 20 of the Code of Ordinances by making revisions for clarity and by establishing different distances for measurements of sound in residential zoning districts, and by repealing the sunset provision and providing for an effective date. Waive the second reading. This would be Brian, and I don't know who all. Brian, you're up.
Yes, sir. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Brian 4-Hour Patrol Lieutenant, Fredericksburg Police Department. Here presenting the noise and sound level regulations second reading. So I'll go over the background and analysis again. The noise and sound level regulation was adopted November 19th, 2012, and changes to the ordinance were made in 2017. And the current version was adopted in May 15 of 17. Due to the increase in noise and sound complaints in residential areas, city staff reviewed the complaints and determined that the noise and sound level regulation needed to be revised. From April 23rd, 2021 to December 12th, 2021, the Fredericksburg Police Department received 172 calls for noise ordinance violations. The 172 calls were spread out throughout the city and covered noise complaints from talking too loud, barking dogs, amplified sound. There's a breakdown of these calls and a map of the call locations that are attached for your reference. Over the last 2 months, the police department measured decibel levels in various noise and sound scenarios and documented those findings in the attached document as well. Decibel level measurements were taken with a police department issued decibel meter. So after the first reading, the staff got back together along with Daniel, myself, Jason, and revisited the measurements from the last option that was 25 or 10 feet. So after staff discussion, the method of sound measurement has been revised to read the following. Measurements of sound shall be taken from either a minimum 10 feet from any property line of the property from which the sound originates, but in no event less than 50 feet from the sound source when the sound is generated in non-residential zoned areas, and all measurements are taken towards the sound. Number 2, under the measurement reads a minimum of 10 feet from the property line nearest the sound source of a property occupied by a person who reports a violation of this article, but in no event less than 50 feet from the sound source when the sound is generated in non-residential zoned areas and all measurements taken towards the sound. I'll let Jason go ahead and take it from here.
Thank you, sir. So just a couple of images. Eric, if you could throw up my laptop again on there so I can share this with council. The image here is sound degradation over distance. So at 55 decibels, it basically drops about 6 decibels for every 10 feet that you go. And so this is just your typical, sound degradation over distance. Now, fences Privacy fences, wood fences, depending on the height and the thickness, can affect that. So can wind and a number of other factors. But the reason we looked at this was obviously our growing concern as far as noise complaints, our concern with citizens who maybe have short-term rentals next to them, or citizens that have other wild citizens next to them. The sound ordinance is difficult to enforce in its current state. Again, we're looking at it has to be measured 50 feet from the source. So one of the issues that we saw during our discussions as far as short-term rentals go was if you are in a situation where there's a loud party in the backyard, whether it's a fire pit, a hot tub, a pool, kid's birthday party, that measurement was taken 50 feet away from the front yard property line. So if you were at 65 feet, say a neighbor is at 65 decibels at their back fence, when PD shows up, if you take your sound measure and you go to the front, it triggers at 45 generally. So very hard to enforce the sound ordinance under its current the way it's currently written. One thing to keep in mind is we are not actually amending the decibels. Those decibels at 55, again, we're talking nighttime hours from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. But just a quick graphic here, if you can see, so this is, 3 houses on 3 lots, Anytown, USA, fire pit in the middle with the 25-foot buffer. So in this instance, if we are measuring from 25 feet, say this neighbor called to complain, police officer would come out. They could measure from this property at 25 feet. They could take that measurement from here 10 feet. Either way, most likely a noise violation would not, if it didn't occur here, it would not be occurring here. But for situations where we see hot tubs or fire pits or pools that are right on the property line, if we were to measure 25 feet, this corner, you can see it goes into this corner of the house. If this is a person's bedroom or a newborn baby or some room there, the officer would be coming in at 25 feet and measuring here. So the officer may not be triggering or finding a violation of a sound ordinance, but to the person that is sleeping in there is a violation of that sound ordinance. So that was the discussion we had on whether we go 25 feet from the source or 10 feet from the property line. This purple line would indicate a 10-foot property line on this parcel. Do keep in mind that the side yard setback is a standard 5 feet for most single-family residential. Now, there's houses that are greater than that. There are some that are less than that, but the general setback for anything is 5 feet in those residential areas. So, again, what we're trying to do is provide some relief to some of our citizens. Tammy said it best. It's late at night. You don't know what to do. You don't want to call the cops because you understand the cops are busy. You don't even know if you're going to really trigger a sound ordinance. Do you want to make that call? So that was probably the number one discussion point that I've had with folks as they've come and talked about noise and sound as far as their issue is how do you enforce it? How do you give the regulations teeth? Because when they call, they're finding that nothing's happening, and then so they're no longer calling. But again, we're trying to balance the needs with the citizens. Again, we are talking late night hours. We're not talking 8 in the evening and things like that. So it will change on how that does. But again, the decibel level, that's been what we've been operating under the last several years. So if you have any other questions, hopefully I can answer them. It's not my area of expertise as far as grading sound variants, but I think I can answer most.
Bobby, I'll start with you.
Brian, there was some discussion about 25 feet or 10 feet, and visiting with some of the staff, 25, from my understanding, is the preferred distance as opposed to 10 feet. Am I missing something there?
No, sir, I don't think you're missing anything. There's been a lot of discussions between a lot of staff members and getting input from citizens and from council as well, and trying to make a decision. I know discussion last council meeting was, we'll do 25 feet for 1 and 10 feet for 2, but after discussion with Daniel, both of them need to read the same. Is that correct, Daniel?
That was my answer to that question, but I want to clarify because the ordinance in its current form is different than what was read at the last meeting, which I wasn't here for that meeting, but the ordinance as proposed at the last meeting, what you were discussing how far you're going to be from the source, the person or the thing that's creating the sound. And this version that's before you now, in residential areas doesn't take into account the source, how far you are from the source. You just have to be a certain distance back from the property line. And whether the source of the sound is just inside the fence or in the middle of the yard, it's not taken into account now. It is still in commercial, but not in the residential. So that 10 and 25 feet doesn't really apply to the circumstances we're talking about now. Now the proposal is if you've got a lot, you've got to be 10 feet back or more from the property line when you're measuring it, regardless of where the sound source is within that lot.
Okay.
So it's sort of a different concept now as far as the measurement.
Okay. Okay, so we're just talking about 10 feet from the property for this particular.
Right. And that's a number that council can set. That's what was, I guess, initially proposed in this draft.
Now, will we have to go through a second reading on this since it's a different ordinance? Modified?
It's not required, but council could if you wanted to.
Okay. No more questions.
Jerry?
Well, I agree with, Tammy and their opinion about, you don't want neighbors policing the other people, but if you're the one on the other side of the fence there trying to go to sleep and somebody's really having a really good time, something needs to be said to them, tell them to shut up, and if they don't do it, then go ahead and slap them. But these decibel levels that are here, I was on that before, and I went around with a couple of the officers, and we drove around and took meter readings at different areas, and I thought they were very reasonable. I mean, are these levels of the decibels, are they the same as what we have now?
Yes, that's correct.
It's just a change another distance from the road or the source.
That's correct. These decibel levels that are currently in ordinance have not changed, and we're not proposing any changes to the decibel levels.
Like I said, I agree with them there. I don't want to be policing my neighbors, but if my neighbors are out of hand, somebody just needs to tell them you're out of hand, shut it down, and then or crank it inside or something like that. And if they don't do that, then go ahead and then let's fine them. Let's do that. I think the Alliance and them putting up those meters that help monitor it. It's like Tammy said, how do you know whether it's the wind or whatever it is? I don't want them to be too scared about it either, but something has to be done because I've been on that side where at 3:00, 3:30 in the morning, I call the police and they come over there and they asked them to take, I had said, I don't want to be a butthead, but I said, if you can tell them just take the party inside. Well, when the officers left, I knew exactly when they left because I heard more 4-letter words shouted over the fence but at 4:30, 4:00 in the morning, you're getting up at 5, and it's kind of nice to go to sleep.
Yes, sir.
I've been on that side too. So I don't know what, the comment was made, $500 fine. I don't think is there a $500 fine on this, Daniel, or how is that going to be?
That's just the maximum that's allowed by law.
That's a maximum?
The municipal judge would have the discretion to set the fine.
I think give them a warning, give them a warning and say, okay, shut it down or take it inside or something like that. That's reasonable. And if they don't do it, well, then yeah, stick it to them.
That's general practice.
Yes, sir. That is the general practice. The police department receives a call.
Why not?
We respond to that location if there's a noise violation, whether it's audible or not, whether it's over the decibel level or not. Officers will make contact with that residence or those individuals, advise them, hey, you are over or you're not over inform them of the ordinance, ask for compliance. You know, in the majority of the cases, they take the, you know, the party inside, or they go inside, or they turn the music off, or whatever it may be. We gain compliance that way.
I don't have a problem.
Tom?
Jason, what are nighttime hours residential?
10 p.m. to 7 a.m., I believe.
That's correct.
That's weekdays or weekends?
That's all.
All
All,
weekends isn't a little different?
no,
11 to
sir.
7,
All the same.
all same. 10 to 7.
Residential.
So residential nighttime hours.
Right.
10 p.m. to 7 a.m.
Thank you.
Kathy?
A couple of questions. The decibel reading has to be done by the resident neighbor in order to call the police.
No, ma'am. Nope.
All right, so explain to me how this works, because on page 57, you have a breakdown of noise and sound ordinances. And the vast majority, you have unfounded, under dB level, unfounded, under dB level. So by the time, whose measurements are those? Police measurements?
Those are the police department's measurements.
And so why are they under when somebody has called apparently with a lot of noise going on?
Right. So an individual is called and made a noise complaint. The officer showed up at the residence, and they determined through the decibel meter that they were not in violation of the noise ordinance. So they're in essence under the decibel level. In almost all those cases, our officers still make contact with them, let them know that there's been a complaint filed. And again, the majority of the time there's compliance, even if they're under. So the breakdown comes from the 172 calls that I reviewed and read those reports, and then broke everything out so you can see exactly what the 172 calls contain.
Were these in residential areas, these calls?
These calls were for all noise ordinance violations across the city limits from April to December last year.
And so what was the majority what were the majority of the calls about? Music, loud music?
I didn't break that down specifically.
Just give me just a general description of it.
So just looking over my breakdown real quickly, we have amplified sound, STR, and then we'll have under level amplified, over level amplified. And then of course we just have of course there's a lot of unfounded, but the under dB level is 19. So, you know, there's a lot of amplified sound, I would say for violations.
Would you say that this ordinance generally relates to the quiet hours, 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. in residential areas more than at other times of the day?
The majority of the calls are evening calls or nighttime hour calls. Is when we receive the majority of them. Of course, we'll get the barking dog call. We get those during the day as well, and other miscellaneous noise violations from animals or livestock that's allowed in town. But the majority of these calls, reviewing them, are in the nighttime hours.
So the concern of the STR owners, if this is affecting them as well as everybody else, would be during the quiet hours. That would be the greatest time of concern for them. Would you say that would be when most complaints are called in from residents?
Most of the complaints of the 172 calls are called in the evening hours. We don't, I guess, classify when we show up, when the police officer shows up, we're not looking to see if it's an STR or not an STR. The numbers that have STR by it is just the officer happened to mention that it was, you know, an STR, or the guest said it was an Airbnb, or however they rented it. It's just the officer made note in their report, and that's how I got to the the actual STR numbers and the breakdown. We don't go specifically ask them if it's an STR or not. It's just if they're forthcoming with that information.
And if you gave a citation at a residence, say people are screaming in a hot tub at midnight, would that citation go to the owner of the property?
No, it would go to the individual
So
making
that
the noise complaint.
that individual can leave town and never show up again.
That's possible.
So that citation has absolutely no value.
It would be up to the municipal court judge
It
on
wouldn't-
any further action if they wanted to issue a warrant or something.
It wouldn't give a lesson to the owner of the property, maybe correct whatever he's doing wrong that allows his tenants to do that.
I'm gonna defer to Jason. Do you have anything on that?
It's hard to answer that question on whether someone would be taught a lesson or not. I mean, whether people learn from their
Okay, well,
mistakes
that
or
was just-
not is something else. But I think the reality is we've kind of been monitoring, testing it, and if the way it's currently measured, it's not shocking that there are so many unfounded calls. Like I said, if you're next door to that party, if your house is, say your bedrooms are in the back, so you're even with a rowdy group, that decibel level will be in violation at that bedroom area. But when you talk 50 feet, you're talking 25-foot setback to the street, talking a 25-foot house, and we said dBs go down roughly 6 decibels every 10 feet. So when the officers get out, then odds are that there's less likely for a violation. There's other factors that play into that. That's also the way it's written. So I believe it's 30 seconds continuous sound that you have to have that reading. So if you get out there and you're a police officer and you're recording it and you hear the yells and the hollers, that may be continuous intermittent for 4 hours, but never be continuous for 30 seconds to result in the ticket. So again, noise ordinance are particularly tricky to enforce from a code perspective, from an officer perspective, but we feel that we need something on the books that gives us a little more teeth than what we currently have.
Okay, thank you. On page 2 of 4, or page 61 of our booklet, second main paragraph, it says, upon receipt of a prior notice or warning, verbal or otherwise, from a peace officer or code enforcement officer of the city, it shall be presumed that the person has knowledge that the sound is unreasonable. So on the first notice, on receipt of a prior notice, so in other words, if you're giving the citation to the guest who's making the noise, there's never going to be a prior notice. The notice has to go to the owner for there to be a prior notice and then a presumption that they know that they're breaking the ordinance. So how do you explain that if you're going to give the citation to the guest?
Daniel, did you want to talk on the presumption?
Violated Friday night and Saturday night.
I think that paragraph that discusses the presumption is limited in application to that paragraph D that starts on the prior page. So that there's different ways that can be a violation. One is if they meet the objective threshold based on the measurement. And if you go down to subsection D, this is sort of call it sort of a catch-all provision where if law enforcement encounters a circumstance where they can't demonstrate a violation based on the objective measurement, then the law enforcement officer can still look at these other factors listed in subsection D and sort of make a judgment call as to whether that is an unreasonable sound or not, given the circumstances. And the notice provision that talks about the presumption, in my opinion, only applies to that subsection D. So if you're talking about a violation under subsection A, page 60 of the agenda packet, that doesn't really discuss any kind of warnings or presumptions or anything. They show up and they measure and it's objectively above that threshold, then it's a violation without having to worry about presumptions or anything. I think the presumption language is included in that subsection D because it's a little more vague of a description, and I guess giving the person an opportunity to be notified by law enforcement that we think your noise is unreasonable now, and if they continue it beyond that, then it would be subject to a citation with presumption that they would have to rebut that it was unreasonable.
So then this, upon receipt of prior notice, refers to the same day?
I think I think it refers to the same sound or type of sound. So maybe if you had a dog barking the day before and you went and noticed, you go back the next day, and if it's similar, exactly the same type of sound. I mean, I'd be less comfortable with that presumption applying. There's more time in between the notice and the second, the revisit, when law enforcement makes contact with them again. So, I mean, this is going to be sort of this whole section. That subsection D is really going to rely a lot on officers' discretion and whether they can demonstrate through evidence and testimony that they think that it was unreasonable.
So there's, I mean, we've heard from the Alliance that they're going to self investigate. And I'm curious how this ordinance has any value at all if the warning or the citation doesn't go to the SDR owner who's supposed to be controlling behavior of his guests.
I might be able to clarify that. So the citation goes to the guest itself. They're the ones that are committing the offense. The officer is going to give that citation to the person on file. And the only caveat on there is that the owner will know because eventually, as part of the new regs, now they're proposed. So if they get adopted in its current form, there's requirements that they register for our business license, our BECA system. So those are the little stickers you see on Main Street. So PD shows up, they can run those. With those identifying stickers now, there'll be no discretion on, we'll know whether they're local, whether they're short-term rentals. And then as they document those cases, that's how development services and PD work together. So we'll get those reports on those BECA licenses at that point. So whether it's quarterly or something like that, we can say, okay, these houses had noise violations, and we can send those to the contact owner and management company so that they know that they were in violation of it. So at the time it happens, no, the owner or the operator most likely won't know that unless they get called from someone else. But they will find out because we are trying to improve our communication and make sure we are tracking these issues.
So, and I don't remember every detail of the proposal, but you get a couple citations at one particular location. You get a report about that, and then you contact the owner.
So we will probably shoot them an email letting them know that these were the violations they had in case they didn't. I think the current proposal calls for 6 violations before a permit can be removed for 90 days. So that's the current proposal. So yes, if we were going through and we saw someone at 3, then we would need to let them know that. I think ideally we'd work on trying to get not quarterly updates, but maybe weekly or something like that. Kind of depends on PD's workflow and work processes, but the idea is to start logging all of the complaints, all of the issues. So whether it's water violations, code, trash, all through that BECA statement, so that everybody has access to it and we can all verify, who's got what, who's been ticketed. I believe the owners can even update that information on their own, or do they need to contact PD to do that?
No, they'll need to contact PD to update information.
So yeah, so we will have to work on our communication with them as part of our rollout when we go live with the licensing system.
Well, I appreciate, the efforts you all have put in to try to make this a workable document, and I will vote to support it. But I think that, we just keep working with the Alliance, and I'm not saying all noise is caused by the STRs. There's noise caused by other residents as well, but I think it's important, by way of saying that the Alliance needs to police itself, and we would appreciate that happening. I'm sure all the residents appreciate it.
Every call the Alliance gets is one less we don't. So
Yeah, and I think,
I'm fine with that as well, but, and that's the goal, so. We've had conversations on these noise monitoring devices, whether they should be part of our rules and regulations. I think to Tammy's point, that I have some concerns. It's very difficult to do those. I wouldn't want to rely on someone else's, use of technology to kind of be my evidence for something. So that's why we have not included those in there. Now, from a best practice standpoint, I think it's very beneficial because if there is an STR owner who is being harassed by a citizen, constantly calling the police or calling cops on noise violations, they would at least have their own evidence to say, hey, this is our decibels, what we're showing. I think it works both ways on that. So I'm a fan of those from the Alliance standpoint, but I'm not a fan of those from the city's requiring them standpoint.
I have nothing.
Okay, thank you. Go back to the chart where you see the down slope of the noise. Thank you. And you showed a Home USA where a fire pit was in the middle, 25 feet.
Yes.
And then, so if that person had a complaint, they would go 10 feet. Yeah, sorry, so that's 35 feet to measure that noise.
On this one,
Yes,
yes.
sir.
So
That'd be 35 feet.
police officer would come out, say this person called the cops. They could theoretically measure from anywhere in this yard outside that ring, or they could measure it, or they would measure it 10 feet inside that property owner line. So if they weren't in violation at this ring at 25, which was the other consideration, they wouldn't be in violation.
So they're going in the backyard of where the proposed noise is coming from, not in the neighbor's yard.
They would be going in the neighbor's yard.
Mayor,
Okay, well, that's what I want to clarify.
we would be with the complainant's permission entering the complainant's property to
Right.
get that
Okay,
reading.
so we're
from
looking
10
at
feet.
35 feet. So go back to your chart. What would 35 feet be from the source?
Well,
The one that's going to have an issue or concern when they're right along the property line.
right. I mean, at this point, if you are talking scenario A, the fire pit is here and this person calls and complains, and the officers come on, odds are, I mean, it would have to be a pretty big party to be in violation. I mean, the sound degrades over time. Every foot of setback helps. In this one, I think this is the big one because if, again, there is a scenario where you have to go 25 feet, you may be further away than what the owner's bed is. And so,
10 foot.
yeah, so, I mean, we think this protects, I think, more scenarios than the other. Is either scenario perfect or is any language on the decibels perfect? I don't know that there is an answer for that, but this is kind of our best way to try and, protect citizens and not overly burden police and not overly burden neighbors. We want people to enjoy their homes. I mean, that's the whole point of owning property, quiet enjoyment and use of your property. So we're trying to balance all of those. And again, we could pick 60 decibels. I think the importance is where you measure that from.
I agree. In the first example, that shouldn't be an issue or concern, but in the second example, at 10 feet, you're going to be probably over the minimum or maximum.
And you may not. I mean,
You may not.
Some people, if I've witnessed it, I've seen the citizen call us on an STR and it was one person in the backyard playing catch and there was no violation. But we've also seen the other where there was 20 people in the backyard and PD's at the front with a sound measure and there's no violation. But again, we're trying to find that happy medium. Where is that number? I can say from the front, it's probably not ideal, not at 50 feet away.
But what I'd like to do is go ahead and just do a first reading on this and not go to the second reading and gather up some additional information for us on, as somebody said, their air conditioner, talking. I just like to hear what's normal in my backyard, kids playing, probably not at 10 o'clock, but some examples of what you all may have experienced, amplified sound's obviously one, but if somebody's just having a chit chat back there, how does that translate into the decibel reading?
Okay.
So
Yeah,
that's what I'd like to see council to consider.
I would probably recommend some type of field trip to do something like that. I've done the testing before. It's very hard to do over an electronic device because you're in control of the volume, what it sounds like. Maybe we could set something. I've done this before in other communities where we just went outside and we had some tapes off and we kind of went and said, okay, here's what we're looking at.
We did that once with shooting inside the city limits. It was very entertaining. So I think that's a good idea, Jason. I appreciate that thought.
So I'll get with Kent and give some options for y'all, see how we can, maybe get some examples to y'all.
But to be fair, it needs to be after 10 p.m.
Right. I mean, this is what we're talking. We're not talking in the afternoon, Saturday at 2:00. I mean, and for most people, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say we don't have a citizen that calls at 8:00 at night. But I think most people from my conversations with citizens they're even okay with the hot tub and the party and, on a weekend to a certain extent. But, sometimes 1, 2, 3, depends. If you're working the next day, you're probably not as likely to let it go than if you are. But every situation is completely different, that's for sure.
Thank you, Jason.
I would like to see something where maybe the hours on Friday and Saturday, I mean, that's time that people get out and, during the week, that's one thing, but like on Friday and Saturday, I think we need to be more lenient on the hours there and increase them like 11 or, I thought we had 11 or 12, but didn't it used to be a,
The hours for
is
commercial
that commercial?
are,
Okay.
are from 11
No, I
11
would think
p.m. to
maybe,
7 a.m.
like 11 on like Friday and Saturday, it's the time where people can get out in their backyard and do something.
Well,
I'm too damn old. I can't keep my eyes open past 9:30.
Yes, I was gonna ask Charlie, can you take a field trip after 10:00, Charlie?
Absolutely, absolutely, without it. I think that's valuable information, boots on the ground. I think that's a
Yeah,
learning curve for me
we used to do that.
because I'm a little concerned on, I have a pool pump and golly, I wouldn't want the neighbor calling in because I was running the pump.
Well, that was why we originally proposed some higher setbacks to pool pumps as well, but
Yeah.
we were told that they're not really that loud.
I guess,
from
well, then I
expert
guess the
on those.
question would be, would my pool pump be in a non-conforming location?
Well, we removed those, so we're gonna leave them where they're at. So
Okay.
we pulled that based on, I had some conversations. I can't remember the gentleman's name. He owns a pool company. And
Okay.
he assured me, all new pool equipment's gonna operate at, 35.
Yeah, they're very
decibels.
quiet, but I'm operating one that's old. Okay, I'll entertain a motion if someone would like to make a motion or further discussion. Be none.
Motion to.
I
This is
move
only the
that
first reading,
that
right?
we
Wait, Tom.
bring this back for a second reading.
Viable motion.
We bring the sound ordinance back to the next council meeting for a second reading.
Okay, we have a motion by Tom,
I'll second that.
a second by Jerry. Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? There is none. Motion carries 5-0. Don't leave. You're still up. Consider approval of resolution 2022-01R approving the submission of the application for a Fredericksburg Police Department Patrol Officer grant. Brian?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Brian Farrar, Patrol Lieutenant, Fredericksburg Police Department. This evening, I'd like to propose a resolution for Fredericksburg Police Department Patrol Officer request. The Alamo Area Council of Governments has announced that federal funds are authorized for distribution, and through the Justice Assistance Grant Program, the JAG program, the Alamo Area Council of Governments has determined a maximum of $75,000 in grant funding is available to agencies who apply and are awarded the JAG grant. The cost for a patrol officer position is $57,120 in salary and $27,069 in benefits for a total of $84,189, not including uniforms, equipment, or the vehicle. The city of Fredericksburg is in need of additional patrol officer position due to the continued increase in population throughout the county and the city and the rapidly growing tourism industry. So at this time, COG has announced the federal funds to be authorized. The other expenses for the police officer position would include approximately $10,100 in equipment and uniforms and $69,450 for a vehicle and vehicle equipment for a total of $79,950. The deadline for the application for the JAG grant is February 10th, and the notification for the grant awards will be made in May of 2022, which would be before our financial fiscal year 2023 budget discussions are complete. The Fredericksburg Police Department requests that the council approve the grant application for patrol officer position in the fiscal year 2023 budget and agree to continue funding for that position after the fiscal year 2023 budget if the grant is awarded.
Thank you. Bobby? Brian, do you know how many grants are available, or is it just one?
So the Elm Area Council of Government is given an allotment of money through the JAG grant, and then the 13 counties within the Alamo Area Council of Governments, so 13 counties and any agencies inside those 13 counties apply for the funds. So it is a competition grant, and the grant is scored. So Sergeant Seelig is writing the patrol officer grant this year, and then he will submit it and then have to appear either in person or via Zoom in front of the JAG committee and present that grant. And he has 3 minutes to persuade them to award the grant to the Fredericksburg Police Department. So we're in competition with every other law enforcement agency in the 13 counties. And the Elm Area Council of Governments has put a $75,000 cap so they can distribute the funds as far down the list of rankings that they can. And we're only requesting one position through the grant because we're capped at $75,000.
Thank you.
Jerry?
No, I'm fine. I talked with Brian when we go on. I think it's good.
Tom?
So if you don't get the grant because Mr. Seelig doesn't write a good grant, are you going to be coming to council this summer for another officer position?
We would like to. Short answer is yes.
Okay. Well, okay.
And we would like to get this topic of discussion on council workshop coming up this year for budget discussion.
Okay. So encourage Mr. Seelig to put his pencil to it. I think what the issue here is, how many grants is ACOG giving out? Just one? No,
It all depends on the amount. It all depends on the applications they've received.
Okay, they've got a pot of money to give away.
Correct.
And we want $75,000 of that pot of money.
That's correct.
And if we have a good grant application, we've received grants from ACOG before.
That's correct.
Okay. I think what we have here is a situation where we need to apply for the grant because it would help the citizens at least $75,000 worth. We're going to need another officer. This is a health, safety, and welfare issue. I don't see us delaying adding someone. So if we can get $75,000 to offset some of the cost of a new position, I think it's in the citizens' best interest to do that. And if past experience is any indication, we have received these grants before.
Absolutely. We've received grants from the Alamo Area Council of Governments for the last 4 or 5 years. And one of those grants was this exact request several years ago, actually for Officer Victor Martinez's position, who is in the lobby this evening, which council so graciously agreed to accept the grant and then continue funding that position thereafter.
And so Kent, the other question I have is, like any other grant, is this where's this money coming from?
It comes from the federal government.
Okay,
which
so
is
this
filtered back
money
through.
has the typical, you can't, you need to spend it according to all the laws, right?
That's correct.
And that's the same grant that we've used for Mr. Martinez's position, and
Yes, sir.
bulletproof vests and tactical combat gear and
Correct.
park money and airport funds. Okay,
Yes, sir.
no, okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Kathy?
I hope you get it.
Thank you.
I hope you get it too. Go for it.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
If I have any questions, I think it's worthwhile endeavor to do this. With that being said, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the grant application for the patrol officer position.
Second.
By Jerry, second by Kathy. Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? There none. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, Council. Mayor.
Okay, do we want to jump to public comments, or should I read number 9 first and then go to public comments, because we do need to go in executive session for 9? Okay, well, I'll read 9 and then we'll do public comment. But we'll delay that until we come out of executive session. Consider the appointments to fill the vacancy of Planning and Zoning Commission and the Zoning Board of Adjustments. So when we get back, Jason, you'll have some input, I guess, in executive session. We'll move over to public comments. We have a number of people that signed up, which is encouraging. I like that. Ruben, Aguilar, you're up. And you'll have 3 minutes. And you'll hear the sound. If you'll state your name and if you're a city resident. And
my name is Ruben Aguilar, and I'm a longtime resident of Fredericksburg. I wasn't gonna come here anymore, but on December the 20th, I saw something that bothered me very much. I saw a lady get up here and tell us how a high-ranking city official called her, and from what I got from that is that he was trying to intimidate her to keep her from speaking. Very well. This is, after I raise this issue tonight, I'm never going to raise this again. This is my personal, what I'm going through. So on March 13th, 2019, I filed a motion to amend my lawsuit against Rusty Herholzer of Kerrville to include the charge of conspiracy to commit murder. 2 days later, he announced his retirement. What a coincidence. This is my attempt or my approach to the SCOTUS, the Supreme Court of the United States, to file a writ of certiorari after I went through the Fifth Circuit in Louisiana. The evidence is everywhere. Online, research it, the Institute for Justice, YouTube, etc. How municipalities and city councils, police departments, the FBI will persecute citizens who stand up to them. They'll use taxpayer money to fund campaigns to destroy your life, finances, jobs, business, harass. Just look at Stone, what happened to a lot of these conservatives. They'll harass you where you shop, pay bills, encourage the businesses and their employees to do the same, creating a dangerous, high-pressure situation. They will place audio, video equipment in your house with no warrant, criminally, for no legitimate reason other than to spy on you. Yes, they will. You can research it. It's been proven. And they'll also make it possible for anyone within close proximity to spy on you as well. They'll try to turn everyone against you, even family. Why don't they use these resources to go after the murderers and child abusers and sex traffickers and drug traffickers? Hundreds of illegal aliens are driving with no driver's license, no insurance, unregistered vehicles, DWI, carrying guns, but no, their priority are citizen activists and critics of the establishment. And why? Because we are effective. We are disrupting the swamp norm. And I will continue to oppose this Orwellian acquiescence of power. I am a conservative nationalist fighting to save our republic and our constitution, because if they get their way, property rights and STRs are going to be the least of your worries.
Thank you, Ruben.
Republic.
Jerry McCormick, and then Edward Rhodey, you're on deck.
I'm Jerry McCorkle. I've lived in Fredericksburg for 20 years. Already, it was last year when I was last time up here, and I spoke about STRs and the amount of money that they generate for the city. And I did a lot of research, and it looks to me like what I can find out is that majority of the STRs are not owner occupied, therefore they don't qualify for any homestead exemption, therefore they pay the highest rate of taxes in this city. And a number that I understand that we have now, it should help us reduce the percentage of taxes that the rest of us homeowners who live in our homes should have to pay. And that's what I want to make the point of. And I also want to say that I spent 25 years as a realtor in the state of Florida out of the 35 years I was there. And I see the prices of the houses in our community here. I live in an area where the homes are 60 years old, and when they're selling for right at $1 million, that just blows my mind completely. And I can't see somebody, I've always taught in real estate school, you never buy the highest price property in a place, because you're going to lose, because the rest of it has to catch up with you before everybody else can sell their property for that kind of money. So I'm going to say that it isn't going to be long till this big bubble that we're in Fredericksburg is going to pop. And then we're going to be stuck with an awful lot of houses that are overvalued and will not sell. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Hey, Edward Rhodey, and then Tom Marshall, you're on deck.
Edward Rhodey, County. One thing I want to bring up today is our city utility bill. Problem I got with it, it's not getting there in time. Sometimes it's past due before we ever receive it. Sometimes it shows up the day that it's due, or one day. This time we got 3 days. The time I write the check and send it, it's really past due. That's the only thing I'd like to get our bills quicker or something. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Edward. I know that's a recurring problem even for myself. Thank you. Tom, and then Mary Lee Marshall, you're on deck.
Don't we love, my name's Tom Marshall, I'm a city resident. Don't we love a good mystery novel? I see one being written right here in town. It started back in July when a contract was signed with the U.S. Treasury Department to receive some funds. Some citizens learned of this and complained about the strings that were attached to a federal contract. Then the explanation was given when this person found an ally in the Texas Municipal League that said, this contract is not with the federal government, this contract is with a state agency. Okay, what is it? Then it was learned that the Texas Municipal League withdrew that statement about it being a state contract and agreed that it was a federal contract. Then we get an explanation that when this contract was signed, it was read and fully understood. What was understood? That the contract was with the federal government, or was it with the state government? I'm hearing two different things. That is the mystery that I'm waiting to hear how it turns out. This mystery probably has some reasonable explanations. And when I'm reading a mystery novel or something like that, I like to second guess what is actually going to happen. What is the reason for this? And right now, my I'm trying to reason how this happened, and it involves something about possible alien abductions, a parallel universe, or maybe even the butterfly effect. I know there's a good explanation. I'm waiting to hear why, this comes out. After all that, some people believe that our problem is with unruly citizens at a meeting. That somebody would believe that, I think, is almost a greater mystery. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Mary Lee Marshall, and then George Studer, you're on deck.
I'm Mary Lee Marshall. I live in the city. This is a summary of Kent Meyer's comments from December 20, 2021 regarding the ARPA contract. I did not know that the statement was false. There's no current mandates or requirements from the federal government regarding COVID-related issues. In my judgment, I do not think the federal government is going to set those mandates because they would affect every state in the country. Have you ever heard of the FDA? The IRS? The EPA, maybe? The EPA thinks we can't manage a fish pond in our backyard. The government hands out mandates and regulations. That's what they do. Who in this room would be so foolish as to pick up a rattlesnake thinking it's not biting me now, so it won't bite me when I pick it up? How is signing a contract with the feds any different? Anyone who would sign a contract with the feds thinking there would be no chains attached has no business even driving a car, much less running a city. If you read the contract and you understand it, you know about the conditions. If you signed it and didn't care about the conditions, you're guilty of maladministration, as the affidavit says.
Thank you, Mary. George Studer, and then we have Wesley Hesker. I don't have my glasses on, so hopefully I didn't miss that too much.
George Studer, City of Fredericksburg. I don't want to miss this opportunity to say something about Daniel Jones, having observed him from a public point of view for a year and a half or more, 2 years. I'd say the words are he's prepared and informed, he's wise, and he's understanding. He has integrity and he has character. And I would say that probably most of the audience that has seen him in these meetings would concur. So put that in your thought process. I want to remind you that a year ago I gave a presentation. We had coordinated an agenda item on the disaster declaration and how do we get out of this mess. And I want to read just so you all know that it's a group decision about that. Section 1, approved 23rd day of March 2020 reads, the City Council hereby consents to the disaster declaration signed by Mayor Linda Langerhans on March 19th, 2020, and amended on March 20, 2022, and consents to its continuation indefinitely until such time as terminated by order of the mayor or the City Council. So by letting this disaster declaration continue for all this time, when it begins as a 7-day period and then extended, I think we are setting a bad precedent. And I am recommending that you have an agenda item in the near future to discuss not just whether or not it should be continued or not, but what are the measures by which you would justify that to continue it or not continue it. I think it has implications on how you address emergencies in the future. The emergency management plan was invoked by the declaration.
The emergency management plan was out of date and never updated. Is that the way you want to, continue doing for the next emergency? It has to be addressed according to what your declarations were. And so the main thing is a lot has changed, and we're not really addressing that in terms of what we're declaring. This is a long period to have a disaster declared, and we can read the declaration, the definition of disaster. It's I don't think we fit it right now.
Thank you,
I
George.
would ask you to set it up as some kind of discussion so the public can see how you're deciding it.
Very good. Thanks, George. Wesley Hesker, and then Jermaine Chastain, you're on deck.
Wesley Hesker, city resident, talking about the American Rescue Plan Act, which has been brought up several times before this council. And no open discussion really that I've seen in public, other than some mischaracterizations because of an outburst of a few people who said, "Let's go, Brandon." Other than that, I could rely on a chastising to the group that was mainly respectful, followed the rules of decorum, and spoke to the subject that they wanted to speak to, and can rely on the Fredericksburg Standard to fail to uphold true journalistic practices by labeling everybody that showed up to protest that as just mere protesters, not informed citizens that came to speak about something that they were concerned about, that they felt like the city council needs to do a better job of oversight, making sure that the city manager and his staff followed the proper rules, followed the proper process, made sure that what they were signing into was followed according to the rule of the law, and understood the consequences of that. And nothing that I've seen in the several meetings since that came up has given me any confidence that this council has really taken this issue as seriously as it should. And the number of things that we see going on at a larger macro level give rise to concern. But just the reaction after that initial meeting where a barricade, which is here now, was put up, more armed officers were brought in, and there were large posters talking about bringing weapons into the law enforcement center, that you can't do that. Well, nobody did. Nobody even implied any kind of threat that I witnessed. So I feel like the mischaracterization and the political influences that would like to diminish the concerned citizens that show up to talk about something of concern to them is really a misuse of time, where we should be focused on did everything get done the proper way? Are there inadvertent consequences that will come about for this? So just a few things. I've written down a fuller context of my commentary and my position on this. I hope that you will take the time to look through it. It's brief 4 pages. And I'll just try to wrap it up by saying that in the end, when you are talking about a government that respects its people, it really should look at their actions. And for many reasons, I feel like there's a lot of assaults going on with personal liberties. Government bodies are aggressively pursuing means to subjugate and terrorize the masses. And if you want to know the true character of a man, give him power. And watch the level of depraved indifference inflicted on his fellow man simply because of opposing views, and you will clearly see their true character. So I encourage everyone listening to be vigilant, and do your part in resisting any kind of darkness creeping in, even here in the deep in the heart of Texas.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Okay, Jeremy Chastain, and then Lauren Smith, you're on next deck.
Jermaine Chastain. I'm a resident of the city of Fredericksburg. I have to say I'm kind of relieved that this council may not really understand what's going on, but I just want to make some comments about the noise ordinance as it is referenced and how it ties into the proposed STR ordinance. And
in the STR ordinance, it would make a noise violation tied to an STR a Class C misdemeanor criminal offense. Other Class C misdemeanor offenses in Texas are disorderly conduct, public intoxication, stealing property or cash under $100, possession of drug paraphernalia, and voyeurism. I have to say that it's shocking that someone in this city is trying to turn STR owners into common criminals for violation of a noise ordinance when they themselves did not even commit the violation. Oh, but wait a minute. The proposed ST ordinance gets around the fact that some other dude really did it by statutorily creating a rebuttable presumption that the owner of the STR personally committed the violation. And with a Class C misdemeanor, payment of the fine is an admission of guilt. So STR owners can't just pay the fine and move on. They are going to have to fight every purported violation to keep it off what they will otherwise accrue as a criminal record with a long string of violations. Adding insult to injury, it only takes 6 violations of any of the STR requirements to get an STR permit revoked. At the last workshop meeting, 3 of the council members expressed a desire to make it only 3 offenses. Doesn't it seem wrong that our elected officials would seek to weaponize our noise ordinance and our ST ordinance to not only take away many of our livelihoods, but also our good names? Hotel owners, inn owners, and non-STR property owners are not subject to the same charges or punishment as STR owners. If you think that sounds unfair, it is, and it violates equal protection under the U.S. Constitution. Take a closer look at the documents that somebody has written for you, and you will see that what I'm saying is right there in black and white. Please keep our trust and do the job you were elected to do. Be remembered for making our city shine and prosper, not dividing it and shutting it down. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lauren, and then we have Jeanette Harmuth, you're on deck.
My name is Lauren Smith. I'm a lifetime resident of Fredericksburg, born just down the road at the Hill Country Memorial Hospital. I graduated from college in May 2020 in the height of COVID, which affected my life plans as it did for so many of my generation. When the start of COVID changed everything, I had a great job lined up working for cameras and video equipment for my college. I had an internship working in sports media, but when COVID happened, that all went away. I stayed as long as I could, but when no sports happened for a year and a half, I had to look elsewhere for a job. So I went back to what I know, to the town I love, to my hometown, Fredericksburg. Luckily, I was able to get a job in Fredericksburg where business is still good and tourists still wanted to come. I was hired by our family business, which I have lived and breathed since I was 10 years old, a B&B reservation service. I have been able to flourish there as I know every aspect of the business, from the website, software, marketing, and customer service. The business in my wonderful hometown saved me when my original avenue was shut down and may never happen again. I'm certainly not a wealthy investor trying to take anything away from any local citizens. I'm just grateful that guests still want to come and experience the charm and beauty that Fredericksburg has to offer, and I'm proud to just be a small part of that, welcoming them with a friendly text hello on the phone or a helpful email response. I'm grateful this town has given me the opportunity to earn a good living, and I want everyone, especially our local residents, such as myself, to enjoy living here. And I believe that we can find compromises that are acceptable to all. Both sides won't get everything they want. That's not realistic. But we can meet in the middle and ensuring our livelihood, my livelihood, isn't damaged. So I ask you, city council members, to look for compromises. We aren't all out-of-town owners. Many of us were born and raised here and are being prepared to take over a healthy, useful business in our community that, if some people have their way, won't be here in 5 years, at least not as we know it today. I urge you to remember that all locals who pay their bills due to tourism, that you not do anything to jeopardize the great tradition of hospitality that was built long before I was even born. The B&B business, where my heart and my skill set is, and I am proud to work in this industry, and that is a big part of what makes Fredericksburg the envy of so many other small towns. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lauren. Jeanette, and then we have Tammy Pack on deck.
Good evening. On January 3rd, the City Council, Mayor, and City Manager were served with the citizens' affidavits to cease and desist maladministration activity in regards to the controversial American Rescue Plan Act funding contract from the federal government with the troubling strings attached. As stated in the affidavits, the mayor, Charlie Keeney, city manager, Kent Myers, and the city council members were given 3 days to respond in order to refute in an affidavit sworn under penalty of perjury the facts that were presented in the documents. The affidavit required that the mayor, the city manager, and the city council members must provide in a sworn affidavit the constitutional authority being used to perpetuate maladministration and malfeasance against the people's rights by taking the following actions. 1, authorizing such a controversial contract without including subsequent feedback and approval from the people. 2, presenting incomplete details of this contract during the community discussions. 3, deciding to accept the contract without an official recorded vote. 4, authorizing the city manager, Kent Myers, to sign the contract before obtaining consensus from the people. And 5, accepting possession of the funds while beginning allocations and plans for these monies without full disclosure and informed consent from the citizens of Fredericksburg. Thus far, the city has not responded with the required affidavit. As required in the citizens' affidavits, this silence by the city represents tacit agreement to the facts stated in the documents. This includes 1, tacit agreement they have violated, you have violated, the people's constitutional rights, the constitutional rights of the people, tacit agreement that this violation of the people's constitutional rights includes liability for damages incurred as a result of any action taken by the city that results in injury to financial stability of Fredericksburg. Tacit agreement that preemptive, I'm not going to have time to read everything, but I'm just going to say we are now bringing in these notices. These are from other citizens that weren't able to do the affidavits but want to support it. The previous notice, the affidavit, and this document all serve to impress upon you the understanding that the members of the community are claiming their constitutional rights to a responsive government that listens and acts upon the wills of the people, not the will of the Fredericksburg City Mayor, Manager, or Council. Please take final notice that your failure to act as responsible trustees and servants to we the people has placed your actions in maladministration. Do not jeopardize your position further. Correct your actions immediately in order to avoid the penalties outlined in the affidavit filed by the community. I now serve the city council, the mayor, and the city manager with these additional, they're called companion notices, and they basically support the affidavits, and they're from different people that weren't able to sign the affidavits. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, Tammy, you're up.
Hello, I'm Tammy Pack. I'm a 26-year resident of Fredericksburg. And I just wanted to say that I'm convinced that one thing could take 75% of the emotion and fear out of the STR debate. I think that this one thing, if we can get this done, we can put 100% of our efforts into finding compromise and moving forward, which I'm encouraged every one of these meetings. I hear more things moving forward compromise. But the thing I think that's holding us back is I think we need the council to state publicly and in writing, number 1, that they're going to protect grandfathering of current STRs, including the ability to sell it as an STR. The owners of these properties paid a premium for income-producing properties, often as part of their retirement plan. They had no reason, based on over 30-plus years of B&B cottages in this town, that they would be able to foresee this right being taken away. If they can't also sell it in the same state in which they bought it, they will suffer severe economic harm. Lawsuits will inevitably follow if that happens. None of us want that. We got bigger fish to fry. And I don't believe the city council is for that, but right now we don't have it in writing. So we need grandfathering in writing. Number two, we need to denounce the concept of sunsetting, meaning the phasing out of existing legal B&Bs and their right to continue to operate over a certain time period. Can you imagine Oma's Little Sunday House, which has been operating legally for 30 years, being told, we're going to take away your permit in X number of years? Again, lawsuits would 100% follow. Some people say, oh, that would never happen. I've said, oh, that would never happen. And I don't believe the city council intends to do that. But we've had respected members of this community recently urging the council to do both of these things. I can no longer assume, oh, that will never happen. Good news is, for those wanting to reduce the number, there will be natural attrition, which I think is preferable, meaning someone will buy an STR and make an informed choice not to continue as an STR. They will understandably lose their grandfathered status, but it was an economic decision they made. I can tell you in the real estate markets, most buyers and sellers right now are paralyzed. They are hamstrung. I've had one bank say, we're not making any STR loans. I don't care if you got the right to grandfather right now. They're so scared. And there's nothing in writing. If we could get those two things on the record sooner than later, we can keep our economy moving and let us spend all of our efforts on finding compromises everyone can live with. The proposed ordinance, to my understanding, doesn't address it. So right now, talk is cheap. We need it in writing and on the record sooner than later. Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. Any staff comments on that? If not, we'll move forward to, do we want to do the city manager report first before we go into executive session? Okay. And then council comments, yeah.
Hey, Mayor and Council, on your city manager's report, first of all, I want to remind you that our next city council work session will be held on January 31st, 2 weeks from tonight, or 2 weeks from last night. And this will be starting at 1 o'clock at the Cardinal Room. And we'll have an agenda packet going out to the council next week on that with information for your review prior to the meeting. I did get one request from the mayor based upon conversations with the council, to add a discussion about municipal court facility to that agenda so that you can start talking based upon some conversations you've had with Judge Becker. There is some need to look at some additional court space, so you wanted to have that discussion added to that agenda. So we will do that. So look forward to the discussion. Again, no action is taken at work sessions, but there'll be quite a bit of discussion January 31st at 1 o'clock.
Can you tell us what the items are?
Yeah,
Please. I might have missed that.
Okay. Annexation plan,
Okay.
municipal court building,
Right.
future bond projects,
Okay.
relief route, you requested that to be on the
Yes.
agenda, and the hotel conference room.
Okay.
Any other questions on the work session?
Thank you.
There will be a couple of executive sessions too, probably one on annexation, ending annexation, and let's see, hotel conference center, I think you determined we get this.
Okay.
Okay. Short-term rentals, regulations, next step. We had a 4.5 hour discussion last Wednesday, lots of information, shared at that meeting. And at the end of the meeting, we identified the proposed next steps for dealing with the short-term rental regulations. And I just want to make sure, that we're comfortable with those next steps, because we kind of ran out of time at the end of the meeting, didn't have a whole lot of discussion on the next steps. And there may have been some feeling that we didn't cover all the council's concerns at that meeting. So I wanted to I'll confirm again, the next steps that we identified was that the short-term rental regulations would be revised by staff based upon the comments made at the last work session. So those revisions are underway. They will be completed this week. And then following that, the Planning and Zoning Commission is scheduled to meet on January 26th in a work session. No action will be taken at that meeting on the 26th. That meeting will be at 6 o'clock here in this room. And then following that discussion, the Planning and Zoning Commission is scheduled to make a decision on that at their next regular meeting. That is a regular meeting in adjacent to February 16th.
No, that is a special
special
meeting.
meeting? Okay.
We felt we're a little too packed with agenda items
Okay.
to tackle all of those, so we'll call them special.
Okay, so Planning Commission would take action on February 16th. And then that would come before the council for a first reading of the ordinance on March the 7th at your regular meeting, and then second reading on March 21st. So those are the steps we outlined, but I wanted to make sure that before we go on to that next step, that the council's comfortable moving forward in that direction. So any comments, questions, concerns?
I have a question or concern. At our meeting, if you were able to stay up that late or sit through it, at the end, it was after 10 o'clock. We'd been here for over 4 hours. We're all fairly old and got kind of tired. That includes you, Tom.
I'm going the other way.
In fact, I had to get you off my shoulder. You're falling asleep. We, at the end of the meeting, we talked about probably the meat of the meeting, which was what happens in R1 and R2. So we got the peas and carrots all along the way, all the little items that were important, but we didn't get to those until the end. And at the very end was the discussion of R1. And I thought that Bobby raised a very important question, which was Jason's suggestion was that we allow STRs next to commercial areas. And Bobby asked in R1, where would that commercial area be? And Jason's response was that it would be along Llano Street. So I started thinking this week about R2, where we went along with what we decided last week would be to allow STRs in commercial areas as well. And it seems to me that Llano Street is right next to R2. Correct?
There are places on Llano, it backs up to both R1 and R2. It kind of just depends on what
Either side of
area.
the street, right? So, I mean, we didn't have that to think about. The question came later when we were our discussion of R2, and I think it's an important question. I mean, we might be able to decide that they should be in commercial areas, but under a CUP process, but maybe we wouldn't want them to be in certain areas. So we didn't have that discussion. We can't pass along our thoughts on that to the P&Z. And I'm just wondering if there's any, motivation among the other council members to go back and look at that one.
Is this something for discussion this evening? This is not a discussion item, is it?
No, he
Okay.
asked if we were satisfied with the schedule, and I'm just saying
Okay.
whether we should look at that or not. And the other point that we didn't talk about at all on Wednesday night was if there's a CUP process for R2 or any place, but main concern is residential areas. We didn't talk about the criteria that would have to be used by P&Z and the council to determine whether or not an STR should be permitted. That criteria was in our agenda pack, but we never talked about it. So I think if the council doesn't want to only permit owner-occupied STR rental types in R2, then we have to talk about the criteria for how to approve or not approve a CUP. And if we don't do that, P&Z is not going to know what criteria to use in making their judgment. So either way, we're going to have to talk about that at some point, unless we decide not to go with the CUP process. Just my thoughts.
Well, that would be appropriate in the workshop, wouldn't it?
Sorry. It would not be something I would recommend putting on your January 3rd, 1st
No.
agenda. But if you want to have another work session, you could certainly schedule that. You could have, it's not necessary to have it before Planning and Zoning Commission. Since they're meeting next week, it'd be very difficult, I would think.
We'll get some feedback from council members.
Pardon me?
Do get some feedback from council members.
Where do you want another work session?
Yeah.
Can we get that feedback now? I mean, so that
Is that legal to
Yeah.
do that this evening?
I mean, and then I could poll y'all as far as a date, if y'all want to have another work session on on STR? Daniel, is that got us on this and what we can and can't discuss? I think.
I'm okay with discussing, since we're talking, it's noticed as next steps in the STR regulation. So I think it's appropriate to discuss if, what your calendar of the next steps is going to be, whether that would include a meeting or not with council. I don't know that you need to take action. I mean, it's noticed that you could take action, I guess, if you wanted to, since it's on the agenda. But I'm okay with you discussing at least, in that context of your calendar moving forward.
The other alternative is to discuss what Kathy's referring to when the council has your first reading of the ordinance. And again, nothing is set in stone until you approve it on the second reading, so you could delay it and have it. That would be after the Planning and Zoning Commission, of course, has their discussion, and they would not be able to weigh in on whatever you come up with, but that's definitely another.
Council, I like that option, but Ken just presented.
I'd like P and Z to go through their work session, see what they bring up, and even take it as far as bring it to the council for a first reading.
And then do a work session,
So we'll see how it works out.
just second reading.
We can change our minds when we get there. Tom?
I think that, the reason we have two readings is that sometimes during the first reading, we make adjustments, send it back to staff, and then it comes back and we don't like it there. There's nothing says we have to approve it on the second reading. I think there's some disagreements over R2, and I think probably Planning and Zoning Commission needs an opportunity to go through the process with the development department and make recommendations and forward those recommendations to the city council so that we can take them under consideration before we vote. And we will have two readings minimum on this ordinance. So I'm okay with it.
Okay. I think we got some direction. Kathy, I know that's not your
Well, I was just
direction,
wondering,
but
that's fine. Would it be appropriate for Jason to at least tell them that this could be an issue for them, and maybe they would even want to look at that question about where commercial areas would be?
I'm kind of mid draft edits from Wednesday's meeting, but my door is always open. So I've had conversations with Tom. We talked about the CUP and the map. So if you have additional questions or you have different thoughts or something's changed since that time, let me know. And
well, you just heard it.
Right. And we can make some tweaks. I mean, ultimately, I think Ken is right. Council, we take this to P and Z, and I wholly anticipate a whole host of other changes coming out of that because they're going to have their own thoughts and recommendations. And so, at that point, that's when it'll come back to council. Staff's recommendation at that point will be to review P and Z's recommendations and say, like I said, there's a lot of things in that document that are kind of, a line drawn in the sand. And so maybe the fine is not $50, maybe it's 75. And staff can say, hey, we have no concern with this. It's council's discretion. Or we can say, we liked P and Z's recommendation on a change. We recommend approval. Or we can say, if you do that, it does X, Y, Z, we recommend denial. So that I do anticipate further changes, not just from P and Z, but possibly from council. So I would like to get at least in front of P and Z to kind of start getting that thought process. We've had 3 work sessions with council. I've yet to have one.
And I, for one, would like to see the draft of the changes that you are working on as soon as possible, as soon as they're ready.
I'll ditto that.
So my goal is to have those completed by the week. I have to have them by the end of the week because we have agendas that go out on Friday. So our goal is to send them out. 45, maybe another 15 minutes. But we will send those out to council as well as P and Z when that comes out.
okay. Moving on.
Okay, Mayor and Council, I just wanted to remind you and remind the community, a little over 2 years from now, we're going to be packed for a major event here in our community, and that is the 2024 eclipse. That eclipse will happen on April the 8th, starting at 12:15 right after noon, and will continue till about 3 o'clock. During that time, the town will be packed full of people. There'll be traffic jams. All the hotels are already booked up. And it is a very major event based upon what we've seen in other communities across the country. So the good news is we have a major planning effort that has already gotten underway here in our community. We seem to be much further ahead than other cities in preparing for the event, due to the fact that we have two really great employees that are spearheading our planning effort, and that is Justin Calhoun, our emergency management coordinator, and Jennifer Krupa, our special events director. And those two individuals are leading the effort to bring all the organizations together to plan and get ready for this major event. We also have a regional planning effort going on with all the cities in the Hill Country area that are going to be impacted by the eclipse. That is being coordinated by the Hill Country Alliance. And both on a countywide effort and on a regional effort, those meetings and discussions are happening on a monthly basis. In fact, today there was a regional meeting of all the cities involved. Next week we'll have a countywide meeting of all the local agencies involved. So a lot of things are going on behind the scenes to get ready for this event. And I'm just telling you that, everybody needs to get ready if you want to leave town that weekend, and you might want to consider that, because there's going to be a lot of park facilities already getting booked up. Again, hotels are booked, and it's going to be packed. So just get ready. Okay. And last but not least, I do have a listing of major personnel changes that have happened this quarter. I'd like to give these to the council once every 3 months so you can stay aware of all the new employees that we've hired, the current vacant positions that we have, and retirements, recent retirements. And I won't go through the whole list. I'll just pass this out and y'all can review it on your own. But we've had 3 retirements in the last several months. Of course, one you're aware of, Stephen Itz, major retirement from the city at the end of the year. But you may not be aware that Sherry Locklear also retired from the police department, and Clem Rivera retired from Parks Department. So those are 3 major retirements. Like most agencies, we have a number of positions open. This includes, of course, the new positions that the council added in this year's budget. And if you'll recall, we added a new EMS unit that involves 6 new hires. Last week, we had 14 interviews of new paramedics, and we have 1 current position plus the 6 new positions. So we're trying to hire 7 new paramedics right now. We did get good response to our ads. We did a statewide recruitment and got good response. But again, a lot of our positions are open because a lot of people are basically the labor force is tight, and we're looking for more employees. So I'll hand this out. If you have any questions, give me a shout or I'll contact Tammy.
Thank you. Council comments. I'm going to start with Bobby.
Thank you. We had airport airport advisory board meeting this afternoon. I've just got a few comments on that. The T hangar occupancy stands at 100% with 28 on the waiting list. The Santa fly-in, the newspaper reported that there were 500 to 700 people that showed up for that. That was in the first hour. The whole event, there was 1,500 people that showed up. The flight school that is at the airport has 22 students, with the youngest one being 11 years old. Fuel sales, I've told you several times that we're having record fuel sales, and year end, we sold 530,000 gallons of fuel. 403,000 of that was jet fuel. Jet fuel year over year was up 43%, and regular avgas was up just 4%. So we have a lot more visitors flying jets into Fredericksburg. On the list of top 500 airports in the United States, just quickly, in 2016, Fredericksburg was listed at 496 of the top 500. Through the years up until last year, 2020, we have moved up to 383 largest in the nation. That's comparing us to all the commercial airports in the United States. So we're definitely growing, and uh, that's amazing. It's very successful. So thank you.
Thank you, Bobby. Jerry?
With the county, we had the county meeting over there and, you know, their agendas are different than ours, that's for sure. They nominated Donnie Shu again as Mayor Pro Tem for 2022. They did some appointees for a salary grievance committee, which were individuals who had served on the grand jury. They set their calendar for their hotel tax, occupancy tax. They had a deal where there was a grant that they were wanting to get for the airport. It was TxDOT Aviation for Airport Rescue Plan. And it'd be federal funds for the airport. And it's in the amount of $54,000, but with the aviation on there, they require a mask. And the judge and commissioners didn't feel like they wanted to go along with that requirement. So as far as right now, they tabled it. That's about it with those guys. We did have our marketplace redevelopment meeting this morning, and we did a dedication of the playground area this morning. It was it's turned out very nice. The people that come there, that do go there with their kids, they say we're coming back again. And the one lady told Tim Crenwell, he said, we come here 7 days a week. And either I or my husband bring our grandkids, and the kids just love it. So the development of the old Security State Drive-In Bank, that's in phase 2, and we have raised it's like phase 2 was 1.1 million, and we've raised 1.3 million. We're over $200,000 on that. So that overflow most probably will go towards the phase 3 of the market plots. It's coming along real nice. We've had some very nice donors donate, and we're still going to need some more in order to finish up phase 3. So anybody who would like to chip in, we're more than welcome to accept donations to help out. So it's going to be really nice when we get all the pavers done and everything done, and the restrooms over there at that end of market plots. I don't know, every time I turn around, Tim Crenwell is thinking of something else to add to the market plots, but it's going to be nice. There's some real, Tim Cook has some nice ideas as far as the Main Street, doing some type of emblem in Main Street there, showing where the Rhines carrier originally sat on Main Street, and it'll tie into the courthouse across the street. You know, it's a real nice thought on that. I would like to say, you know, we got a printout on the, I didn't bring my numbers. The COVID. The COVID it's coming back again. We have these variants are coming back. They are, I think we had 2,800 confirmed cases. There's still just 86 fatalities. But I have been noticing over the last, we get a weekly report on these COVID positive rates. And high school, you talk with the St. Mary's and the elementary schools and the middle schools and high school. 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago, they were down to maybe one in middle school. And I was looking at the report, and the last report showed that there was like 20 in high school. I mean, the numbers are just gone up. And, you know, wearing masks, I hate to say it, but I hate the damn mask, but I think everybody else hates them too. And you got to wear a mask, you got to do the hands, and please get vaccinated. Get vaccinated and let's get over this here. Let's get through it. That's fine. What y'all do what you want to do. I'm sure you will because you have all along. So, no, I guess I'll leave it at that.
Tom?
I attended the groundbreaking of the playground this morning. Councilman Lukenbach was there. What a great addition to our city. And that is really bouncy. The material that's on the ground is, if you got to fall down, that's what you want to fall down on. Former Mayor Krumogi made the comment that he had people that brought their kids out there all the time, and they were so happy. The children were so happy because they found out that there was going to be a restroom where the drive-in, the Security Bank drive-in parking is, and they made the comment, now we don't have to run all the way across the park to go pee. So I think that once that part of Market Plots is completed, Market Plots is the crown jewel of the city. We need to keep it that way. I think we're in spite of everything that's going on around us, we have no control over things that happen outside the city limits. We have no control over, very little control over, we have some control over what happens in Gillespie County, virtually none outside of Gillespie County. So, we just keep doing what's in the best, what's in the best interest of our community. I did read the affidavits, and of the 131 that were sent to council, 52% of them were from people that live outside the city, 48% from people that live inside the city. I applaud those that took the time to complete the affidavits. Thank you for being involved. That's what a republic's all about. That's where we live. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. Kathy?
Just a brief comment, following up on what Jerry said about the pandemic. And George, we're still in a disaster. I don't see any reason to do anything about the disaster declaration right now because the Omicron variant apparently is extremely contagious, and the numbers that we have here at 50% and above positivity rates, probably much more than 50%, given that that's only what the hospital gets. They don't get what the city gets or the chamber or certain doctors' offices. So I think we still need to be cautious and wear masks when we can. That's all I have.
We're a giving community, and mentoring is a very, very important facet to the foundation of the young people that are in our school systems. And there's a crying need for mentors. It's 1 hour a week, and it's the reward to work with these young kids and see how they need someone to be hugged, to listen to their concerns and their problems. So if any of y'all have 1 hour a week, I challenge you to get a hold of the mentoring system and give those children 1 hour. That's all I want to say. Thank you. Good evening. Okay. Executive session. The city council will recess in open meeting and can reconvene exec. Oh, I'm sorry. I missed that. Thank you. Yep. Items for future agenda. I'm sorry, Ken.
Okay, Mayor and Council, on page 75 of your packet is a listing of future agenda items. And again, we've extended this listing out for several months so you get an idea of what's coming before the council over the next 60 to 90 days. Just wanted to call your attention to the preliminary listing for the next meeting on February 7th, next regular meeting. You can see we've got a lot of agenda items that are on that, and now we've added, of course, the second reading of the noise ordinance. So I'm not sure all those items will be coming forward, but you can see if we are likely to have a long agenda for February 7th. So, and then moving on to February 21st, we start our hot review process. The council starts reviewing the procedures you can see there. The county's a little bit ahead of us this year. And then eventually, of course, you'll approve the hot applications as you continue your review and discussion. So lots of items for the council to consider over the next couple of months, and be glad to respond to any questions that you may have on any of the items that are on the list. And of course, we don't know at this point all the items that will be coming forward to Planning and Zoning Commission, say 60 days from now. But right now, we're busy.
Understandably. Anybody got any comments on that? No. Then we will go to 14, executive session. The city council recess in its open meeting and reconvene in executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code, section 551.074, personnel matters. Consider and discuss the appointment to fill the vacancy of the Planning and Zoning Commission and the Zoning Board Adjustment, section 551.074. And consider and discuss the annual evaluation of the city attorney, 551.074. I'll entertain a
I
motion.
move we go out of regular session to executive
A
session.
motion by Jerry, a second by Tom. Any further discussion? There is none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. We will take a 5-minute
recess.
Sorry, salary, okay,
Okay.
and appointments, I'm just ahead of the
appointments.
game. Okay,
All right, Mayor, as far in appointments to fill vacancies on Planning and Zoning Commission and Zoning Board of Adjustments, I nominate Cynthia Scroggins to be appointed to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and I nominate Clay Sears to the Board of Adjustment and Anna Wynn Smith to Board of Adjustment, subject to validation that she is a resident of the city of Fredericksburg.
do we have a motion, do I hear a
I'll
second?
second that.
Second by Gary, any further discussion? There is none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, there is none, motion carries.
Mayor,
Excuse me,
the, considering the annual evaluation of the city attorney, I move that we keep him on at the salary agreed upon in executive session. Not sure that is public knowledge, is it?
I think we said it when we did the city judge.
Is it city attorney? Okay,
It's public information.
Okay.
I'll make a request.
There's
Then
no
I-
sense in hiding it.
Then I said, I recommend that, the salary of the city attorney Daniel Jones be raised to $124,000
Second.
per annum effective January 1st, 2022.
I don't know that we can do retroactive
Yeah.
salary.
Oh, we
In fact,
did it
I'm
for
almost
the city
positive.
judge.
Okay.
Oh, well, I wasn't here, sorry.
Oh,
We
okay.
have to-
Well, tomorrow
Okay.
morning,
And
prorated
if not,
tomorrow.
if not retroactive, then
Okay.
with, beginning with the next pay
Okay, we have
period.
a motion by Tom, do we hear a second?
Second.
Second by Bobby, all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed,
Aye.
there is none, motion carries 5-0. Now I'll entertain a motion.
Move to adjourn.
By
Second.
Bobby,
Second.
Second.
second by Tom, any further discussion?
Aye.
There is none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed, there is none,
Aye.
pass 5-0.
Okay.
Good evening, everybody, good night. To the people who are live streaming, y'all have a blessed day, blessed evening, and Happy New Year.